about to start the cover for Justice League number 12, and it's going to feature this very pivotal moment in DC New 52 history where Superman and Wonder Woman share their first kiss, and it's the beginning of their relationship. And obviously this is a big departure from previous Superman continuity. He's always had this relationship with Lois Lane. But when we decided to do New 52, we wanted to break up that relationship and possibly explore other partners for the Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman was a logical and very interesting choice. Okay, it's like 5:30 in the morning, and I was wrapping up some other work. Kind of putting this off, but I typically work very late at night. I find it's a lot easier to focus and concentrate when there aren't as many distractions, but I also think there's something biologically behind it all. I think during the day, as animals, we're really programmed to go out and hunt and kill or be killed. You know, your senses are on alert. You're very aware of your surroundings. And at night, your body kind of shuts down. It's typically when you dream and sleep, and I think your brain is more open to emotion and internal thought. And a lot of times when you're drawing, I think those are the kinds of things you want sort of coursing through your body, through your brain, as you try to convey some sort of emotion behind the art you're creating. So for those two reasons, I find that I can be much more efficient and produce better work from 11 p.m. to 5, 6 in the morning. The other thing I want to do on this cover, because it's this big moment and it's the kiss between these two characters, and we expect that to sort of spark a lot of debate and attention from the readership, is to think about other images that are iconic kiss moments. I'm leaning towards having them fly just because these characters are superhuman. They have these incredible powers, and if we're going to do something, I want to make sure I don't repeat another image I did back when I did a storyline called Superman for Tomorrow, where I had Superman picking up Lois Lane. I don't think they're kissing while they're flying, but they're in somewhat of an embrace. This cover is so much about this moment between Superman and Wonder Woman. It should really be reduced to its essential elements. So my initial idea is to just feature Superman and Wonder Woman in this very passionate kiss while they're flying up in the air. What's funny is that when I draw for fans at conventions or store signings, I tend to draw very quickly, and there's very little erasing, and I think it creates this deceptive illusion that comic books can be drawn very quickly. And the truth is, when I sit down and do the actual work for the interiors of the comics or the covers, it tends to be very tedious. There's a lot of drawing and erasing and redrawing, where I will make very, very subtle refinements or move the line over literally a millimeter or two, as I kind of refine the drawing. Back at it, taking the time to make some small photocopies of the piece of art. And what I do with that is I will take some markers and basically draw over the copies to try out a couple other configurations and lighting schemes. So hard to say. So this, we're about 3 hours into the cover, and still making these minute adjustments. I think I'm gonna probably do something kind of slightly in between this. This is the part I like to call the home stretch, which is I can now relax and kind of enjoy the drawing that I've laid out, and hopefully there won't be much cause for having to reconstruct the composition here. As pencilers, we have all these different ways of defining a pixel on the page, whether it's hair, eyes, nose, muscle, energy, and we just put a cipher down, an abstract expression of that part of the drawing, and the mind and the eye reads it as what we intend to it to be. And then what's interesting is that over the generations, the way we express ciphers for hair, muscle, eyes, it changes, just like fashion. And if you're a student of the art history of comic books, it's interesting to see how these definitions of ciphers changes as pop culture changes, as art history changes, as modern graphical design enters into sort of the public consciousness. In terms of the actual amount of finished drawing, this one's relatively simple. As you can see, most of the time was spent figuring out the composition and the nuances of the gestures. And even still, as I'm doing this, I'm still thinking about some of the choices I've made and need to make as I go further down, and replaying kind of the decision making that led up to this point. Kind of drive yourself a little crazy if you think about it too much. That's why it's a great idea to have a deadline. I think also that's why a lot of artists are not any faster or more productive without a deadline. You'd think you'd be able to work at the same speed. I think sometimes you get so lost in the details of what you're doing and making all these subtle, different, minute changes that unless you have someone literally with a gun to your head saying you've got X amount of time to get it done, make your decisions, there's that danger, that potential danger of kind of getting lost into the details and losing sight of what you're trying to do. The home stretch here actually went faster than I expected. I've got the art, and I made a bunch of photocopies. And so with these photocopies, I'm going to do a little bit of lassoing and seeing what sort of abstract shapes work best. And it works best to sort of freely do it independent of the composition of the figures. I mean, it has to interplay with the figures, obviously, and it's critical how it interacts with the shapes. But when you lay down the lines, it's best to actually just sort of ignore it and just draw what you think is a cool looking abstract shape, and because that's the way the line would actually look. When you throw a lasso, it's not going to coil a certain way because there's an arm nearby. So I tend to just sort of ignore what's here, or just kind of almost put it out of focus, draw them very quickly, and then fine-tune it based on where the lines go. If some of the lines go in very, very bad spots, like over the eyes or over the face, obviously I screwed up. As I'm doing this, I'm wondering whether it was such a great idea. Part of I think the power of art is that there's a mystery as to how it was created, and I don't know if this is incredibly interesting to people or supremely mundane and dull, possibly the latter. And I think sometimes it would be showing actors rehearsing their lines over and over before they did their before they did their performance, and how that would kind of take away from it, the impact of it, having seen those rehearsals. When I drew Superman for tomorrow, um, working with writer Brian Azzarello, there's a scene where Superman finally is reunited with Lois in the Phantom Zone, and he swoops in and picks her up. Very similar to this pose, but not in this kind of embrace. At least, up here. And I wanted to do a shot that kind of harkened back to that, or that had that kind of same vibe, but with a different character. I think the big change with this storyline is that it's no longer Clark or Superman with Lois Lane, or pining after Lois Lane. He actually has a very different kind of relationship with Wonder Woman, and I think as the storylines sort of dive deeper into that and explore, the interaction of these characters, I think you get some incredible stories out of it, and I think that's one of the payoffs to what we did when we relaunched the universe in the New 52 relaunch back in September. I think it sort of reset the table and allowed us to do these kinds of stories, really showing readers, longtime readers, something new. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for staying up with me. And right now I got to scan it, drive it over to my inkers, and move on to the next deadline. Thanks.